Hello everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this new motherboard from ASRock, part of their Fatality series. This is the Z87 Killer. So for starters, this is a standard ATX motherboard. It features the Z87 chipset from Intel, and it's designed for Intel's 4th generation core processors, also known as Haswell. So it's got the 1150 socket, and bear in mind this is not backwards compatible with socket 1155 CPUs, so don't try to drop a Sandy Bridge or an Ivy Bridge processor into this one. There's a lot of stuff to go over on the box, so I will do my best to decrypt it all for you. This is a new version, first of all. That's good to know. Also, you get a free XSplits live or premium membership at $25 value. There's a license inside the box. Some logos down here along the bottom for the different features, of course, the Intel 4th generation core processors. As part of the Killer series, this does also feature a Killer E2200 network interface card from Qualcomm Atheros. This does have support for 3-way AMD Crossfire X configurations, as well as 2-way NVIDIA SLI configurations, or of course you could do an NVIDIA Quad SLI configuration with this if you had, for instance, 2 GTX 690s. Windows 8 ready, so the UEFI implementation means you're going to get really fast boot times. HDMI in and out, also Dolby DTS True Audio also included. And then up here they're indicating that the Killer E2200 NIC, based on their experiments, as they have listed it here, is going to improve your latency. So this being a gaming-oriented motherboard, the NIC is going to boost your networking performance by up to 5 times. So for instance, in League of Legends, you can have your latency reduced by 136%, Diablo 3 by 60%, Dota 2 by 47%. And again, those your mileage may vary depending on the setup and the internet environment and all that good stuff. But there it is. So some of the benefits of using that Killer E2200 and the packet prioritization software. More information on that right here. No lag, just frag. 5 times networking performance. Cool. And more of the same right there. Automatic gaming traffic prioritization. Let's talk about the audio though. Purity sound. So they've combined a Realtek ALC 1150 chip along with a TI NE5532 SNR 115 decibel signal to noise ratio differential amplifier. So that gives you 115 dB signal to noise ratio, excellent bass, less sound distortion, more details, and it supports up to 600 ohm impedance headphones, which is a pretty nice feature for built-in audio. Also an HDMI input, so you can connect another device such as a gaming console or something like that via the HDMI, and you can kind of use that as a pass-through to your monitor, so you can use your monitor for a couple different things. It's also pretty cool. They have a thing called Keymaster, which is listed right down here. So basically it's kind of a hardware implementation through the motherboard where you can make your mouse have a sniper key. So that will kind of reduce your DPI in that, so you get much smaller movement. So if you're zooming in with the sniper scope, that can help you out. You also have a macro function that's also built in right there. Gaming armor is their term for a lot of the features they've integrated here, such as high density power connectors, 15 micron gold finger connections for your video connectors, as well as for the connectors on the motherboard itself. SLI crossfire power connectors, so if you're running some high power graphics cards, you can provide some extra juice via a Molex connector. Not necessary in all configurations, but if you are running a multi-card configuration, you can plug that in to give yourself some additional power. Qualcomm Atheros Killer LAN, we've already talked about that. Purity sound, we've already talked about that. And lastly, over on the right side here, XSplit, more info on that, so you can use that if you're going to be streaming to Twitch. And there's a special Fatality mouse port that you can use to give yourself access to those Keymaster functions, such as the sniper stuff that we talked about right up there. And then Fstream is the software utility that ASRock ships along with this board. You can also download it straight from ASRock, so I'll be mentioning that. It's kind of the software package that enables some of the higher level or different features that this motherboard has to offer. Inside the box we have a few accessories and whatnot, so let me walk you through those. First off, in this protective electrostatic packaging, we have what I can only assume is an SLI connector, and man, is this thing really in there. Here, okay. Yes. SLI connector, there you go. It's a rigid PCB one, so that will give your cards a little bit of extra support, and it's got the spacing that lines up with the motherboard, so that should be the only SLI connector that you need for this particular motherboard. We also have some serial ATA cables You get a total of 4 of them. They look like this. Here, let me pop one of them out for you. Haha. Yeah, easier said than done. So you get a couple like this one that have straight plugs on both ends. And then you have a couple like this that has a straight plug on one end and a 90-degree angled plug on the other end. Both are handy in different building situations, but all of them are going to be compatible with SATA Rev 1, 2, or 3. So if you're connecting a SSD, for example, don't worry, they'll work. They'll give you all the throughput you need. Here's your input-output shield. You've got the Fatality logo on this, since this is a Fatality branded product. And you also have clearly colored and labeled IOs, so you know what's what. Here is a software setup guide. So this will actually take you through the UEFI functions, which is handy to have if you're not familiar with that. There's even pictures at some point, or so I'm told. Yeah, pictures, there you go. And then we'll also walk you through the actual OS software that you can install, which is called FStream, that setup utility, which is labeled right there. You also get your motherboard manual proper, or quick installation guide. So this is gonna have multiple languages, so you can get it all set up. You also have a motherboard driver disk. It's generally best to go to the ASRock website to download the latest versions of these drivers, but you also have the powered by ASRock case badge if you're into case badges. Here is your XSplit broadcaster gift certificate. There's a code on the back of this card that I'm not going to show you guys right now, but you enter that code and you get 3 months of premium XSplits. And then your main motherboard guide, which is going to take you through all the important stuff like a list of all the components that are installed, which is right there. Very helpful. And then, of course, we have the motherboard itself, so let's move on to that. So the first thing you might notice here is the color scheme, of course. Black and red, primarily for the components on the board. The board itself is sort of a dark brown color. And then, of course, you have some other colors going on throughout there. But you might also notice the gold capacitors, again, as part of the higher quality components that ASRock has used on this board. And then another thing that I noticed was that while this is a standard ATX motherboard, it's actually not as wide as a typical ATX motherboard. And I know this is going to be fairly subjective, but just holding that up. This is about 8 5/8 inches long, whereas standard ATX boards will go about an inch longer than that. So if you are using this in a smaller case or something that doesn't have quite as much width available or depth available in the case, this might be a good option for you because it will give you a little bit more space between, say, your serial ATA connectors here and the front of your case where your drive cages might be. So something to keep in mind. I did want to give you a quick look at the PCB itself. So there from the back, with some bit of reflection, but you can probably get an idea. It is a brown PCB, and at least for a couple of the, or at least the heat sinks, I should say, for up here on the power delivery as well as down here on the chipset are held on by Phillips head screws, so fairly easy to remove and replace those if you ever need to clean them in the future, or if you're thinking about water cooling, which is always an option for a few folks out there. I did want to point out fan headers while we have a wide shot of the board here, so you have a total of 6. Couple CPU fan headers up here on the top. One is a 4-pin for your main CPU fan header, and then a 3-pin supplemental CPU fan header right next to it. 3 more 3-pin fan headers nestled right here beneath the CPU socket and a little bit to the left. That makes 5. And then 1 more 4-pin fan header down here at the bottom, so that one does have the PWM capability. And of course you can use the ASRock Fantastic tuning utility to tune those fans to your preference. Again, that's included in the software package. Let's talk details though. We'll zoom in nice and close here and give you guys a look at all the detailed features of this motherboard, starting in the lower right-hand corner. So down here we have some pinouts. These are your front panel connectors. They are labeled, so you can reference the little chart that's down there to kind of tell you what's what when connecting up your front panel. This does have dual BIOS or dual UEFI chips, so both of them are located right there, and they have a sticker printed on them with the BIOS version that this ships with. You can update it, and then ASRock also has a feature called crashless BIOS, which can actually recover even if you have a power failure while you're backing up your BIOS. It will reset it. You just need to make sure that you have the BIOS file on a USB key and it's labeled properly, and all that stuff's in the manual. You have a BIOS selection jumper right there, so you can use that to switch back and forth between the BIOSes if you want to set up a couple different configurations. You also have some USB 2.0 front panel connectors right there, so you can use those to wire up some USB 2.0 on the front. There's a 3.0 available as well, which is over on the other side of the board. We'll come to that eventually. Here's a Molex connector. If I tilt down, you can probably see that. Again, that is for supplemental power to the PCI Express lanes. Probably only going to be necessary if you're running multiple video cards. So And then again, even if you are running multiple video cards, I would only recommend doing this if you're actually having system instability, or if you're really running high-end cards that draw a lot of power and maybe you're overclocking them. A lot of configurations you don't need to plug that in, but it is there for an option in case you're running into any instability. You have an infrared header right there, also a COM header for COM functions if you have any COM based peripherals that you need to plug in. And then your HD audio down here in the bottom left corner so you can wire up your front panel mouse and headphone. Speaking of audio, you got a bunch of the audio components which are over here on the left side of the board, including up here at the top your Purity Sound. That's a little shield that they've put over your Realtek ALC 1150 codec chip to provide, again, some shielding for that. And then of course you have the amplified audio with 600 ohm impedance support. Let's talk about PCI Express next, because you've got all these PCI Express slots right here. First off, the short black ones, these are all PCI Express Gen 2 compatible. They're all X1 slots, so your peripherals that you might want to pop in there, such as maybe a Wi-Fi card or something along those lines, easy enough to pop those in and support them. Those are going to be routed through the chipset, so again, PCI Express Gen 2 support there. You have PCI Express Gen 3 available in all of the long X16 PCI Express slots. So this top one here can run at X16 if you're using this by itself. If you're running two cards and populating both of these slots, you'll have X8 and X8, and that's what you'll be doing if you're going to be doing an NVIDIA two-way or quad SLI configuration. And then you also have the option to support three AMD cards. So if you're going with the Crossfire X solution, you can do X8, X8 or X8, X4, X4, and you can actually set up three-way, and that does maintain PCI Express Gen 3 across all three of those ports. So good job, ASRock, by not going with PCI Express Gen 2 on the bottom, because I've seen that configuration with some boards. But I digress. Okay, moving right along on the right side over here, you will notice the Fatality logo on your Z87 chipset. The Z87 chipset controls quite a few things on this motherboard, but the thing that I most want to talk about is located right here. Those are your serial ATA ports. You get a total of 6 of them. They're all serial ATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second compatible. So you can plug in SSDs to your heart's content along these. I do want to point out that if you are thinking about doing a RAID configuration with a lot of these, and you're actually planning on purchasing, say, 3 or more SSDs, you will hit some bandwidth limitations. So this is not an end-all solution if you wanted to, say, drop 4 or 6 SSDs into a RAID configuration. So bear that in mind, but you do have the support for that, and as long as you're not accessing all the drives at the same time, you can still get plenty of throughput and performance. Also, the aforementioned USB 3.0 front panel header right there, that's a 20 pin, so you can plug that in and give yourself some front panel USB 3.0 love, which I really like. I can't do without USB 3.0 on my front panel these days. Okay, next to that, or above that I should say, you got your 24-pin main motherboard power connector, so from your power supply, that's where that plugs in. And then next to that you have your DDR3 DIMM slots. DDR3 memory up to 1600 speed is supported officially by Intel using the internal memory controller on your processor. ASRock was listed actually overclock memory speeds up to 3050, which is pretty crazy. Bear in mind, if you're dealing with overclocking, particularly with memory, it's going to depend on buying a higher end memory kit that's rated for that speed, and it's also going to depend on your processor, because not all processors are alike. Intel's only guaranteeing 1600 speed support. You're definitely going to be able to get beyond that with overclocking, but again, just bear in mind, you're not always going to be able to hit 3000 in particular. That's pretty aggressive when it comes to memory overclocks. Your CPU fan headers, again, located right up there at the top. Here is your main events. That's your 1150 socket, again for Intel's 4th generation core processors, and it's laid out right there with plenty of space around it for various types of coolers, particularly if you're going with a skyscraper cooler, which would definitely be oriented that way. Tons of space both below and above that, so should have compatibility with lots of different aftermarket coolers on this board as well. You got a Z87 Killer logo over here on your cooling for your power delivery for the CPU. If I tilt that to the side, you can see some of the chokes involved. There's also capacitors and there's MOSFETs underneath that as well, providing plenty of heat dissipation for that. And then above that, last thing on the front of the motherboard is the 8-pin supplemental CPU power connector, so definitely make sure you have that plugged in so that you get all the power to your CPU that you need. Oh, I did want to point out, you also get a Killer E2200, another little shielding there on your Killer NIC as well, so that's pretty cool. Okay, flipping the board over here and rotating it like so, we can finish off on the motherboard I/O. So here's your I/O panel. First off, you get a PS2 keyboard port right there. Hey, that's handy to have, particularly if you've got an older PS2 keyboard, maybe something like a mechanical one with N key rollover or something. Nice having some backwards compatibility there. And of course, if you're going with USB, some more recent peripherals, plenty of that as well. A couple USB 2.0 ports right there, a couple more USB 2.0 ports right here. And I did want to point out that this one has the Fatality mouse port logo on it. So if you want to use the Fatality mouse port functions I mentioned earlier in this video, that's where you want to plug that in. You have some video outputs here for the iGPU, or the integrated GPU from your Intel 4th generation core processor. 3 of those available, and the new ones can actually support displays out of all 3. So you can do 2 and 3 display configurations using the iGPU. You got HDMI out right there. You also have DVI out right there, and both of those are HDCP compatible. You've also got a VGA out right there, and you can support resolutions from these outputs up to 1920 by 1200. Over here you got another HDMI. This is actually an HDMI in, and you can use that for that pass-through function I already mentioned, so you can utilize your monitor for more than just your PC without having to unplug and replug cables. 4 more USB 3.0 ports located there in the back. Here's your killer E2200 NIC port, so you can plug that in and get your LAN configuration up and running. And finally, you have your analog input for the mic as well as your outputs right there for the 7.1 channel audio. And then you also have the option of an optical toslink out. And that is going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, we've been taking a closer look at the ASRock Z87 Killer Series Fatality motherboard, featuring the 1150 socket for Intel's 4th generation core processors, as well as the Z87 chipset. I'm Paul with Newegg TV, and if you enjoyed this video, you can find more just like it on our Newegg TV YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or informative or entertaining even, go ahead and click the like button. It's located right down there. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.